Today I'd like to do a video on Byrna and escalation of force in my view. First, I want to say follow all of your local laws and regulations. That's the first thing, so always follow those first. Second, I want to picture a scenario for all of us. Picture a scenario where you have something has occurred, whatever that is, and you have tried to avoid an altercation to the best of your ability. You have tried verbal de-escalation while trying to physically exit the situation. And you have lost all means of egress available to you. You are not in a vehicle and you are on foot. So let's put this video in that premise. Again, follow your local laws and procedures. This thought experiment is a well-prepared person. You have, as a well-prepared person, in my view, this is my opinion, you have a pistol that you are well trained with, a spare magazine, and a hip holstered Byrna. You have now been blocked and unable to leave this scenario we're in. As you have trained in situational awareness, you have not let the group get within distance or time for you to draw your pistol. So you've kept them at a distance where you have enough time in your training to defend yourself with your sidearm. The group, for whatever reason, is growing and you are trying to exit the situation. So you are doing everything in your ability to get out of that situation. At this point, you have not seen items that are a clear escalation of force. So right now you just have people yelling at you, they're getting in your face. I take that back, because they're not in your face because you're keeping your distance. They're yelling at you, they might be verbally abusive, they might be verbally threatening you, but at this point, and you're in the group, and you always watch hands. So the trick is always watch hands. Hands will tell everything. Someone might get really, really angry and have their hands up here, which isn't a big deal. The second hands start to go into coats, go into bags, start to go to sides, all that kind of stuff, that's what you have to watch. So that's your lesson for the day. And no one has possessed anything that at this moment seems like the situation could go physically threatening. Again, based on local law, you draw your Byrna because it's a non-lethal, and the group is getting more enraged, and either the group is growing or the more aggressive of the bunch are starting to cross that bubble that you have made for yourself, whatever that time is. You pull your Byrna, and loaded with Byrna Max or whatever you're legally allowed to carry. You're now in the situation where you have no means of egress. You have tried you have tried leaving. You've tried verbal de-escalation. You tried verbal de-escalation and exiting the situation. You do not have a vehicle to get into for shelter. You do not have a building to get into for shelter. And the group is getting larger. Again, based on local laws, and consult attorneys if you have legal questions. This is just a thought experiment. At this point, they're approaching and not slowing down and getting more rageful. In this scenario, you don't have to go directly to deadly force. You have something that is non-lethal. You pull your Byrna with your projectile that is legally appropriate, so Byrna Max for most of the country or South Africa, and you deploy 1 or 2 rounds of your chemical irritant. What that's done, without having to kill anyone, what that's done is that it has showed the threat that you are capable and willing to defend yourself, that you are not easy prey to attack. Now that's where you go from that point, which has happened in the months recently. Someone has defended themselves or their family by shooting, and all that does is stop this one or two people. Because you have to remember, in mob mentality, they're gone. Their brain's gone. They're in a zombie state. So all they're thinking is this person's gone down. Now that might make the weak ones go, but all that'll do for the people that are there that are their brains turned off, all that's going to do is say, oh, well, they got hurt, I'm going to try and do something. So you have to remember, in these situations, this is a great option. Byrna is a great option to show that you have done everything possible to de-escalate the situation, back away, use non-lethal force, that you are doing everything possible. You know, when it comes around to, and again, consult attorneys, when it comes around to court, that you did everything possible. And in your complete toolbox of things you could do, you did everything before escalating to deadly force. That being said, since this is an escalation of force talk, remember, if you are dealing with a mob, you have got to be able to, if you're gonna defend yourself and you're in that situation where that's the only option, know that if your magazine holds 15 rounds and you've got 200 people, yes, that'll again make the weak ones go away, but those ones that are just, their brains are turned off and they're in mob mode, they're going to keep coming. So know, whatever choice you make, you got to play those brain games in the back of your head. What are you going to do? Because that's going to lead to something, right? So they're going to come and get you. You got to have some plan in place. So just remember that if you get in that escalation of force situation, it's not going to be, it's not like the movies where you shoot one person like, oh, let me all go. Once you get a group, especially a group that's in that riot mob mentality, you are no longer looking at the person that is thinking rationally. They're in mob mentality mode. And there are some great books and papers you can read on all that stuff from psychologists. But just know, when you're looking at that, that's something you're going to have to consider in your mental thought experiments you use on yourself. My personal view at this chapter of history is I do everything I can to avoid people and large groups that even hint at something escalating in a larger situation, because the best thing to do is to avoid confrontation. And the best way to avoid confrontation is to just recognize what's going on around you and do your best to avoid those situations. If your city, which has happened recently, if your city is having, protests and yelling outside of Walmarts, don't go to Walmart. If they are on the nightly news for the last couple of nights and protesters are shutting down streets near where you go to the gas station, don't get gas there. Don't put yourself in those situations. But you also need to have the planning in place. So if you do find yourself in that situation, plan out ahead of time what you're going to do. And this is just one of those situations. And again, you just always, at this moment in time, political sides to the side, whatever side you're on, whatever part of the world you're in, you have got to think tactically about everything you're doing right now. Grocery store, gas station, going to work, going to the park, whatever that is, you have got to start thinking tactically, because there's a few YouTube channels I watch and podcasts I listen to, and they use news articles and they go through them and break them down. People are on such a hair trigger right now. We are in such a powder keg with the fuse just dangling in the air, waiting to be dropped. And you do not need to be the person that is in the middle of that situation where all of a sudden someone has some action that is very minor, a word said that's taken out of context, rubbing up against someone in a store, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden to that person, they've lost their job, they're angry, They've been protesting. They're already driven. In the back of their mind, they're at 4,000 miles an hour running through just anger. You don't want to be that one thing that just sets them off. So you just have to remember, and this goes back to the escalation of force, avoid everything as much as possible, and realize right now, so many situations on a almost daily basis on the news somewhere in the country. There are situations that are going from 0 to 100 so fast, so fast. And you've got to start changing the way your brain's thinking about those situations. I just want to say, everyone watching, hopefully this has been helpful. You need to avoid confrontation as much as possible, more so than ever right now. That being said, you also need to be able to defend yourself. And this is a really good option. You're not shooting someone and killing them. You are giving yourself a bridge to that point. You are giving yourself an option so that you do not have to escalate to that. And hopefully that's all it is. Hopefully all it is someone yelling, they get a little too aggressive, and they start to threaten you physically. You can use something that shows them you are not going to fall over and let them do whatever heinous things that they would like to do. And then, per local law, you can go from there. So I just want to thank everyone for watching, and I hope this video is helpful.